If you've seen any tutorial about drawing the human body, you may have heard about proportions or correct proportions. You know, make the human body 7 heads tall or put the eyes halfway into the head, stuff like these. These sound pretty cool at first, like these simple concrete instructions you can follow that will make your art correct or better. But I think they're completely unnecessary or even harmful, especially for beginners. Firstly, proportions are simply not something you should be learning or thinking about as a beginner. What's the point of learning about how tall or big something is going to be if you don't even know how to draw it to begin with? It's silly. So yeah, before going into the proportions, learn anatomy first. That's that. Second is, these 7 or 8 head measurements aren't even correct anyways. There's no such thing as correct or wrong proportions. There is, but not in the sense that a lot of people use the word. Proportions can only be judged relatively. You can't look at a stylized drawing and real life and compare the proportions of these two. These are simply two different subjects, with two different visual aesthetics. You can say it's unrealistic or something else, but calling it wrong doesn't make sense. The only way a proportional choice could be wrong is if it's unintentional and incoherent with the rest of the aesthetic. Look at these two examples. Both of them has big hands, but one of them makes sense whereas the other doesn't, since one is consistent whereas the other isn't. So yeah, there is no one correct measurement for things. I mean, otherwise art of so many people would just look the same anyways, right? Well, to be fair, you could just say that you have your own measurements for your style that help you keep things consistent within your style. And that's fair, but I would still recommend going into these later on. I remember having countless sketchbook pages trying to figure out some good face and body proportions for my style, but it never looked right, because I had no visual aesthetic to go alongside these proportions I was trying out. Instead of just trying a bunch of different measurements to determine your style, just draw a lot and slowly build your visual aesthetic. Once you start to see some similarities within your drawings, then start looking at these drawings to determine proportions for your own style. So you're basically changing the order of some steps. Aside from that, there are two extra things you can keep in mind to have a better consistency with your proportions as well, which are relativity and landmarks. These measurements are good and all, but what happens when the pose is a bit more extreme than a static standing pose? I guess they could still kinda work, but like, at this point, they're just making things harder on you rather than easier with all these guidelines. In this case, thinking about relative size makes more sense. So, instead of thinking, say, the torso is this head tall and the legs are this head tall, you just think about how the arms are slightly longer than the torso or how the hands are slightly smaller than the head. Examples can go on. I guess this wouldn't be as accurate as those measurements, but they're still simple and they get the job done. The other thing is landmarks. Landmarks are areas of the body, usually bones, that will mostly stay the same regardless of the body type or the rest of the proportions. The most important ones are the edges of the pelvis alongside this bone at the end of it, the clavicles, the opening part of the ribcage, and the elbows and the knees. You can see, despite the body type and the proportions changing, these landmarks stay mostly the same. A lot more stuff could be considered landmarks, honestly. The topic in general deserves its own video even, so let me know if you'd be interested with something like that. Once you know where these are located, the rest is just about placing all the other elements around these accordingly. So let me go over it one last time. If you're a beginner, don't even think about proportions, and just draw and keep learning. Once you're at a certain level, now you can determine some measurements for yourself, or not. And on top of that, use relativity and landmarks to keep your proportions consistent. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching till the end. Have a nice day. Bye.